Nation. How's it going out there in sunny California?
It's good. It's actually not that sunny today. We have a little abysmal day. I think we were just discussing it's actually nicer in New York than it is here in California. I don't know how that happens, but yeah, we're dealing with a little wind and 60-degree day today. So
Well, we had a long, cold winter, so you had me beat on many a days when you were
that's true.
in the 50s and 60s. So this is just
Right.
a freak thing.
It's true.
So yeah, we're going to talk about obviously wrestling, and we're going to go ahead and kind of give us our little background stories. So everybody who might not be familiar with myself or you know my buddy John or Sig, as he's known as on-air persona. So go ahead and then fill everybody in on exactly who you are and maybe your journey out west.
Sure, sure. Like described, I am John Sig. I'm representing the West of the East-West Connection Wrestling Podcast. I moved out here about a year and a half ago, roughly. But I was an upstate New York boy, like KG, for pretty much the majority of my life. Coming out here, I was able to get into the wrestling scene out here, and there's a hotbed of indie wrestling. So before the pandemic, anyways, there was a ton to do. But so I've been enjoying my time here as a South Californian, for sure. So
So yeah,
what are some of the things back in New York going on before the pandemic? Of course.
as far as as far as what
Uh,
that I
I don't know. I was just shooting it back to you. I didn't really know where we were going
have.
with that.
I guess basically, we met in college going back. Everything here is.
We're losing you. I lagged out. All right, off to a bad start.
I think I might have had some cutouts of like The Rock or something like that, and you had I don't know, I don't even remember what you might have put on the outside of your bag box. Do you remember?
Uh, quick pause. Half of that was lagged out for me. I didn't hear a word you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. The bag box is how we kind of got ties into wrestling.
Right.
The famous bag box. Do you remember what was on the outside
Sure.
of your bag box?
I don't remember at all. I don't. I don't. But no, I do remember you had the thing of The Rock, and I was like, "Hey, The Rock, you
Yeah.
like wrestling?" Yeah, like that was it. And then here we are,
So I think
50 years later.
I think we had hung out and watched Raw that night, which became like a ritual for us in
Right.
college because at that point Monday Night Raw was still watchable, unlike it is now. So I think
Right.
obviously the glory years for Raw and um, of course Nitro, and we'll even get into ECW was the mid to late '90s was the real hotbed, and it was popular. You know, worldwide, not like how it is now. As far as I mean, it's still a huge company and still a huge thing. But I think as far as the mainstream and the pop culture, it was so much more prevalent back then.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, during the actual Monday Night Wars, having to flip back and forth or set your VCR to catch them both. Because for me, there wasn't many fans who didn't want to watch them both. There wasn't many diehards one way or the other. It was all great wrestling, so you had to kind of figure out how to catch both. But no, about the mainstream thing, like you said, it absolutely was the case. You had The Rock and you had Stone Cold and even Goldberg and the WCW and guys. Those were their shirts were everywhere. Every store in the mall had a Goldberg shirt, a DX, an NWO, and it wasn't out of place. Now you have the section in the back of Hot Topic. They have a Young Bucks shirt, but it's hidden behind everything. It's like it's just not the same. Absolutely. So no, you're
Okay.
100% right.
Um, a little bit of that cut out on my end, but hopefully it recorded okay. But
All right.
also, I remember, just being in school, middle school, high school, wherever, you would see people in the hallway and pass by with a DX shirt on or a Stone Cold shirt or an NWO shirt. Like it was so big back then. And
Sure.
the Last Dance documentary that was just on, I think brings it around the pop culture where you saw Dennis Rodman coming on screen and Mike Tyson on Raw, and like it was a huge deal, and it was on suddenly WWF and WCW were being talked about on ESPN and huge media outlets. And
Yeah, the
obviously
Tonight Show.
I don't want to
Yeah,
yeah, the Tonight Show, with Jay Leno of course getting involved. But I don't want to say that it was the golden years of wrestling, because for me that would be like the 80s. Maybe I'm impartial to that for when I grew up.
right.
But as far as mainstream, everybody knew the characters, everybody watched. Certainly, that's why we want to look back at that time period, when it was, really enjoyable to watch.
Sure. Going along with that point, it's hard for us to distinguish because you see it with rose-colored glasses. When you were a kid, everything was better, you know. So it's hard
Sure.
for us to subjectively look at it that way. But I do think that the Attitude Era was a more mainstream because even back when we were kids, it was Hogan, it was The Rock and Wrestling, but that was just the beginning. You know, it was either Hogan or you didn't know about wrestling. If you knew about Hogan, you knew about wrestling. Here, it's a different story. There was different avenues. There was Austin, there was Rock, there was Goldberg, there was DX, NWO. It was a more of an ensemble cast. Whereas during our golden era, as you're calling it, and I agree, it was just Hogan. If you weren't in with that, you really didn't get it. But in the Monday Night Wars, the Attitude Era, there was a lot for people to grab onto, and that could have played a big part in it. So
Most definitely. I think going back to the fact that they were on network television, prime time, Monday Night Football was on too. You could flip between that, and it was so, everybody felt like they were watching. And then, of course, being a part of those shows, as I went to a couple Nitros and Raw during that time, the intensity with the crowd was just 100 times better. I mean, as we go back and look at these shows, as we're kind of at the beginning of the Monday Night Wars, not so prevalent, but the crowds were just so hot, and
sure.
the signs and the crowd interaction was just like unbelievable compared to now. Now it's like everyone's just kind of sitting there on their hands, maybe one or two big pops a night, and that's it.
Right. True. All right. Well, at this point, let's change the subject just slightly. Let's do a little background here. We started talking about our golden era, so let's get into what started you off as a fan. What were some of your timelines, so to speak, with wrestling? What have you liked and disliked, or at least what have you liked since you're? And when did you start watching wrestling? Let's start there.
Well, definitely, mid to late 80s, Saturday morning. It was like Saturday morning cartoons and wrestling was on. Long before Monday Night Raw and Nitro, I remember WCW being on late Saturday nights. I would catch sometimes. NWA, I vaguely, remember that kind of transition from the WCW, because they were on, I think, Saturday nights previous to that. But yeah, earliest memory, I would probably say like Mania 5, 4 or 5 for me. But yeah, definitely being into seeing characters like Hogan and Ultimate Warrior that were just larger than life, cartoonish, figure, physiques, and just being sucked right into all that, and obviously the athletic aspect of it, and it was still really popular then, when I was a kid. What about yourself? I imagine we're around the same age, obviously.
For sure, yeah. Just a couple years on you, but I was born in '83, and by '84 I was rolling with Hulkamania. I don't remember who exactly put it on, but whoever put that first thing on the TV, man, I was in my crib. I wouldn't go to bed without my Hulk Hogan video. So it started early for me. Hogan was my superhero. I didn't get into Superman and Batman because I had Hulk Hogan. So this all goes back to that era. But then ECW was big for me. Ring of Honor was big for me at different points in my life. But my transgressions changed. I've been it's been a sliding scale of what has kept me entertained. But I've definitely been a lifelong wrestling fan in one aspect or another. So
Absolutely, definitely. So I think it's cool. We're definitely going to take some polls too. If you guys want to talk about some of what you got into wrestling, we'll put something out. What sucked you guys into it. Then we could also do maybe what was your favorite your favorite show? Was it Raw? Was it Nitro? Was it ECW? Was it NWA previous to that? Um, and also, we're actually going to start with going back to September 4th, 1995, the first Nitro. We're going to go back and take a look at that. If you guys want to go on the network or probably YouTube and watch it with us as we do the review, it's definitely good stuff on there. We recommended to do that. Anything you wanted to plug in with that?
Also, we're gonna try to sneak in that week's corresponding ECW. So while the Monday Night Wars on WWE television and revisionist history only looks at WWF and WCW, and then they'll sprinkle in, oh yeah, ECW was a thing that we stole from, and we're looking at the whole week to week. So week one there was no Raw. It was preempted by the Dog Show or whatever that week when that happened. So it's a standalone Nitro, 1 hour and 1 hour of ECW television. So really, just do your research if you're into this idea, so you can have the same ideas and go with you have a better idea what we're talking about as we're going through. So
Certainly a lot of free time to watch. At this point,
right,
Nitro was only a 1 hour show, so it was about a 45-minute show that you could watch
yep,
and get through. And ECW was the same, only about an hour. Hardcore TV, and the date on that one was, I have to look back on my notes, the next day, which was November 5th of
right,
'95. And
yep,
certainly they had a lot of stuff going on back then that was ripped off by both WWE or
for
F
sure,
at the time and WCW, and there's no way around it. I mean, as we go back and watch it, we'll be like, hey, this
right,
this is what happened on ECW 2 years ago, So I think it's cool to look at that and include them because that's certainly probably our favorite
yeah,
out of the three, as far as doing real groundbreaking stuff and creative and of course excellent matches. But so yeah, I think it would be great for you guys if you want to join in. That way you know what we're referencing. Go back. There's only two shows. We got 2 hour shows. The dog show was on, so no Raw this week. As
right.
we go
We don't
back,
do that. We won't be reviewing the Dog Show. Sorry, folks.
I thought, and I thought about it, and I thought about it because, as my free time, I'm actually a dog walker. So
Sure,
in the neighborhood,
sure.
yeah, times are
All right.
tough. I gotta get that
Well,
supplemental
maybe if we
income
get
here.
enough viewer requests, maybe if we get enough viewer
Yeah,
requests, we'll throw a Dog
we'll
Show
put it
in.
we'll put it out there if we want to do
All
a
right,
review on the dog show or
all
not.
right. That's
Um,
fair.
So I think this is a good introduction for us. You kind of know where we're coming from. Of course, Sig and I, roommates, had our own radio show at one point in
Right.
91.5 WVHC, the voice of
That's
Herkimer
right.
County. Still can't forget that. But that was, of course, going back 15, 16 years ago. So it's been a while. And I know a few people have been asking and wondering if we ever would do something like this again, believe it or not.
Sure. Yeah, we're excited for it. But at the same time, bear with us. We're both still getting used to this new technology right now. Eventually, we'd like to get to a live format, but we're not too sure how that's going to happen. So for now, if you're digging what we're doing, or you have any pointers, feel free. If you think something could be tweaked, we're open to suggestions. So bigger and better things ahead. But this is day one, and we're both excited for it. So thanks for checking it out, guys.
Absolutely. And stand by. We'll have some more content coming pretty soon with some polls for you guys and also our reviews of week one from the Monday Night Wars.